Right, I want you to all think about this. When you're an injured person, their ACC is meant to be dealing with your injuries and restoring your life to its former being. And literally what I found is when they try and get rid of you for free because they've stuffed up your injuries and they make false declarations in your name, the whole plan is to get rid of you for as little as possible and literally a couple of years down the track accuse you of fraud. McGreevy said at the start, oh, why did you go out and try and help yourself? Well, we all know what his plan was, go out and try and help yourself. In other words, go out and try and motivate yourself. You've just been laying on the floor for, what, almost 4 or 5 years? Struggling like fuck, you know? And as soon as you breathe, all of a sudden he's telling you to become a drug dealer and everything else, but he's trying to literally say there's nothing wrong with your injuries. And then they start, mistreating you. Plotting, prodding, intimidating, bullying, abusing. This is all part and parcel of the entrapment. And when you get to that stage, it's like you're always been made vulnerable. You're always been put on the back foot. And your doctors don't do anything about it. Forensic psychiatrists are only there to literally try and help them carry out their crimes and try and cover up their crimes. They're all there to protect the organization and protect the fraud that they're actually committing against their long-term claimants, which is 20% plus of their income for the rest of their lives, literally. And in that time, they're going to try and get rid of them for free. Now, you're covered for your injuries, but they don't write your injuries up on a medical certificate. They all write it down as chronic pain. And that's a major problem, because once they write it up as chronic pain, all your injuries go out the window. And the injuries they then cause you are covered up by police and forensic psychiatrists and everybody else. So, bloody flies. So literally you're being covered for the injuries you already have. You're being covered for chronic pain, but you're not being covered for the injuries that they're causing you after that. And you're talking post-traumatic stress as well as physical injuries, right? And adding to the injuries you already have. So there's another part of this vigilantism and this state terrorism. And then they're trying to get rid of you using fear and violence while they're threatening you, intimidating you, bullying you, abusing you, harassing you, criminally harassing you, and finally violently attacking you. Violently attacking you. Shit, I can't even get the words right. And you're telling the proper medical professionals these things, right? I mean, they say they're putting security guards outside medical appointments, part of their intimidation. They're putting private investigators on you 24/7 sometimes. It's bloody ridiculous. And then when the private investigators all finished in 2007, they then put the police to do their dirty work, having me state criminal kidnap, set up for crimes, using threats to kill again and again and again and again and again, declaring it an act of war against me. So what you do is you get to this stage where you try and settle it to where they're agreeing to correct everything and address everything. Then they renege on their agreements, so they're addressing fuck all, and they're literally going back to their fear and violence bullshit. So then it's criminal containment, then trying to get rid of you again and again and again for free, then trying to drive you away and walk away with nothing. It's all a fraud, manipulation of the law, and it's all fear and violence to literally back you as far into a corner as they can get you. It's criminal containment of a victim's life. It's the worst Nazi-run system I've ever come across in my life. It's fine for short-term claimants because you're not going to be defrauded of that much and you're not going to lose that much. For long-term claimants whose lives they fucked up, in my case I would say I've probably lost, just on the income that I had back then, I've probably lost up to now in excess of $500,000 just on the income from 20 years ago. So that just tells you how their settlements are fucking bullshit, you know? It's like that tells you exactly how I was willing to take losses, to have everything corrected and everything restored to its former being. They take away your quality of life. You sit down in front of a medical professional, they don't have a clue what to do. And the other thing is, when all your medical notes and all your medical files disappear, shortly after an ACC destroys 10 years of file, shortly after accusing you of threats to kill again, There's more criminality coming into this case and trying to cover up your own crimes. And medical professionals saying, I don't know what I'm working from. So they're all trying to take away from the start and start at point A like 10 years later. It's an absolute fucking joke. And that's how these terrorists work. Then they literally get to giving you a medical certificate and literally trying to have you beg just for what you're entitled to. I don't beg. Begging's not my fucking my way, and I'll stand up for anything they want to argue. They don't give me reviews and appeals because they know there's going to be a hell of an argument, and they know that every time I lose a review, that I'm going to win an appeal, because I know I'm right when I'm having my argument. I know they're acting corruptly and criminally when I'm having my argument. I know that they're having lawyers lie in review hearings and at appeals on their behalf so they can get away with murder and get away with extortion and fraud and theft and robbery and pillaging and plundering. And as the facts prove, I've never lost a review. The only appeals I've lost, they've acted illegally and unlawfully in making their decisions, and they haven't made the decisions on the arguments that were actually being made, because the actions by ACC were criminal and the judges didn't want to declare that. So, that's why we're in the situation now we're in today. And they've done internal investigations, and their internal investigations amounted to fuck all, because they left out all their criminality and all their corruption. And they've hidden it behind their agreement of 2006 that they made null and void in writing. And they keep referring back to it after every malicious criminal prosecution, after every malicious criminal action, because they don't want to address anything that I'm coming out with, or anything or any questions that I've asked. And but in their internal investigation, they didn't mention the fact they were supposed to restore my life to its former being. They were supposed to set me up on my own self-employed business. They were supposed to pay all my legal bills, and they were supposed to correct every medical report that wasn't corrected, or that wasn't written up properly. So what you actually have is the biggest Nazi organised crime run industry in the world, and this is how they criminally contain their victims' lives. Then you have on top of that the repeals of the laws of criminal provocation, so you can never defend yourself physically. It's literally a criminally holding to ransom situation, so they can go out and bully you, abuse you, threaten you, intimidate you, harass you, criminally harass you, beat the fuck out of you, kill you. You're not allowed to defend yourself legally in New Zealand under ACC. It's a fucking terrorist run organisation and operation, and everybody involved in it has committed a crime. Medical professionals it's not my problem. They all want to pass the buck. You'll go right to the top, to the Prime Minister, you'll go to the Governor General. Governor General will tell you to go back to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister will tell you to go to ACC, or just not answer you at all. The ministers will tell you to go to ACC. So they're driving you back to ACC, but they're not addressing the corruption and the criminality that this organisation runs upon, and the foundations that they set to carry out their crimes against their victims. So literally, you're going to be screwed over left, right, and centre. And when they declared an act of war against you, this is all part of their act of war. And that's why I call them state terrorists. And in some ways, they're just terrorists, just out and out terrorists. It's everything they do is just to destroy your life. And yeah, don't know how much more I can take, but that's my take on it all. And I've done nothing wrong but had my injuries, and they've done everything to screw me over left, right, and centre. And Gerard McGreevy is a fucking terrorist, and he needs to be held criminally to account for that. And everybody who helped him carry out this crime also needs to be held criminally to account. And the people stopping me from any inquiries are John Key, well, he's now gone. It's now Bill English and his cabinet. So what are you left with? You're not allowed any inquiries, and you're not allowed to defend yourself, and you have to be held in a Mexican standoff, stalemate, criminally held to ransom, and doctors doing nothing because all your medical notes and all your medical files have disappeared. And it'll cost absolutely millions. So literally what they're trying to do is price you out of justice and accountability, because the country's been run by fucking organised criminals. Alright, over now.